A couple weeks ago, it was announced that Scarred Lands was going to be coming to Savage Worlds. For those who are not familiar with Scarred Lands, it originated back in the year 2000 with a creature collection of monsters for the D20 system. There was also a setting book that was released for D&D 3.5. In 2016, there was a Kickstarter for Scarred Lands for 5th edition, about 2 years after the original D&D 5th edition released. On the day that I'm recording this, there was a small preview released for a creature that's going to be in the Savage Worlds version of Scarred Lands. And so today, with you all, I want to take a look at this creature and compare it to the 5e version of that creature, which is the one I have access to. Let's take a look. So the creature that was released was the Blood Reaper, and it's been converted from its previous versions into Savage Worlds. And I have up here the 5e version, and so take a look at the stat block and everything, and also talk about the monster itself. Because one of the things that's going to be really interesting is seeing how we take this creature and the lore behind the creature and translate it into Savage Worlds, not just the stat blocks itself. For those of you who are not familiar with Scarred Lands, the Scarred Lands is a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting after a war between the gods and the Titans, similar to things you can see in Greek mythology. Now, I'm not an expert on this setting. I have read a few things from the books, and I have run one of the adventures, but the adventure that I ran was re-flavored for a Faerun game, so I don't have a whole lot of experience here. So the monster we're looking at is the Blood Reaper. So you see here, it says the many horrors lurk in the depths of the Hornsaw Forest, but Blood Reapers are among the worst of them. As you see here, they stand between 8 and 10 feet tall, and they weigh over 350 pounds, and they are the spawn of Harunruk, which is one of the titans in the game. What we also see here is that they are fearlessly berserk. A Blood Reaper is a ferocious fighter that leaps into battle heedlessly, wounding as many foes as possible with its scythe-like claws. Blood Reapers never willingly retreat from combat, which is going to be important for you to understand when playing these or running these as a game master in your Savage Worlds or D&D game. So for those of you who are familiar with 5e, we can take a look at the stats and you may get an understanding of what the power level of this creature is. So looking here at the Blood Reaper, it is a large apparition, so we're looking at like a 2x2 hex. It has a 17 natural armor class. It's got 207 hit points, which is quite a bit, and it's got a speed of 50, which is fairly fast. So usually the speed for most creatures is about 30. Looking at the attributes, we're looking at some pretty high attributes. We got 19 in strength, 15 in dex, 22 in constitution, which is quite high, 13 in intelligence, and 14 in wisdom, and a 6 in charisma, which makes sense. These things aren't exactly charismatic. They're quite terrifying. Skills, we got an acrobatics +6, perception +6, stealth +6, and survival +6. So with that +6 in stealth, it's possible it could sneak up on you, but it seems like it's kind of a creature that's just going to attack you on sight. It's got a 60-foot dark vision, so we don't have to worry about any sort of lighting conditions, and it's got passive perception at 16, and it's a challenge rating 10. So the idea of challenge ratings in D&D is that if you have a party of 4 10-level fighters, they should be able to take this thing on. Not fighters the class, just 10 5-level players. Then looking at its abilities, it has armor spines at the start of each turn. It can deal 5 damage, 1d10, piercing damage to any creature grappling it. Okay, so don't grapple this thing, if that wasn't already obvious. It's got deadly reflexes. The Blood Reaper gains 2 extra reactions per round that can be used only for opportunity attacks. And so in D&D 5e, you only get 1 reaction per round. However, this lets you do up to 3 then, because you get additional 2, but you can only use those ones on opportunity attacks. And I can see how we could probably easily do this inside of Savage Worlds by just adding additional attack of opportunity chances, because usually you only get 1 per turn. Is that true? Is it only 1 per turn? I'm pretty sure you only get 1 per turn in Savage Worlds, but now I'm questioning myself. That's the wrong book. Where's that situational rules section? Deadly reflexes probably won't matter in Savage Worlds because you can get as many free attacks and from withdrawn from melee as you want. It also has Keen Smell, which says the Blood Reaper has advantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on smell. So giving some sort of bonus to smelling based notice rolls is probably what it's going to have. It also has Standing Leap, which says that the Blood Reaper's long jump is 50 feet and its high jump is 25 feet with or without a running start. So likely they're just going to give it the Leaper ability or something like it, but we'll see in a moment. It also has multi-action, which allows it to make 5 melee attacks, 1 bite attack, and 4 claw attacks, doing 7 damage to the bite attack and 14 for the slashing claw attack. So could be a decent amount of damage. I think the main scary part of this monster in D&D is its HP, so I'm not sure how we'll see that in Savage Worlds. So let's go ahead and take a look. That's the monster in D&D. Now let's see how they translated it. So here we go. We have the creature profiles, Blood Reaper. I imagine they're going to do a few other ones of these, but for now, let's just take a look at this one. All right, so looking over here, we see the spawn of Harunruk. We see something about its tactics. That's fun. Blood Reaper is a ferocious fighter. Pretty much exactly what we read in the other thing here. And that's one of the nice things about doing a translation of a an already existing product is that sometimes you get a lot of that text already taken care of for you, and you can just kind of convert the actual mechanics into Savage Worlds in this case. So for attributes, it would be like right where I have my camera, so I can't exactly see it. Attributes: Agility D8, Smarts D6, Spirit D6, Strength D10, and Vigor D12. So it did have that really high Constitution score in D&D 5e, so having a high Vigor roll makes a lot of sense. It's going to give it a lot more toughness, making it a lot harder to hit and actually do damage to it. We have an Athletics of D8, Fighting D8, has a Titan Speech, and Elvish, and Sylvan. It's interesting that it's got Elvish, because Elvish is not a language that it has on this character sheet, I don't think. No, it's got Sylvan and Titan Speech, but not Elvish. It also has a notice of D8 plus 2, which I think, again, we mentioned having a D8 plus 2 for smell, so maybe just giving it a flat plus 2 to all of its notice rolls. It has a pace of 8, which is about 40 feet, so it's like only two more inches on a game board than a regular creature. So it's actually kind of slower in this system with this stat block than it is in the other one, because in 5e it was a pace essentially of 10, whereas this is more of a pace of 8. Now the units of measurement between Savage Worlds and D&D are different, so they might actually be like a little bit closer together, but in terms of inches on the board, comparing the two systems, this one's a little bit slower. Again, we have a parry of 6 with a toughness of 12, with 2 of it being from armor. Has the Bloodthirsty hindrance and is thin-skinned. I believe thin-skinned makes it easier to taunt or test or something like that, so I can't remember exactly off the top of my head right now. For edges, it has ambidextrous, so it doesn't have any sort of penalty for using its offhands. It has Frenzy improved, which means it can do a Frenzy attack twice. And what Frenzy does is it allows you to roll 2 fighting die and a wild die and apply 2 of them to the monster. And that's kind of how I figured they would put this down, so that's pretty cool. It also has Improved Sweep and 2-fisted. So for gear, it says it has 4 scimitars at strength plus D8. And I wonder if that just means that you can take the claws off these things and use them as scimitars, which would be probably kind of cool if you want to do it that way. I might mention something in the stat block about like you can harvest these as scimitars, not that they are scimitars. For special abilities, it also has Thick Hide, which gives it a plus 2 to its armor. It has a Bite with a Strength plus D4, which sounds about right. Its claws have Strength plus D8 with AP2 and Rending. Man, I don't remember what Rending does. I've seen Rending before, but I don't remember what it does. So I'm not sure what happened, but my audio just went completely kaput after this section of the video, so we're going to have to restart that. What Rending Attack does, it says if you get shaken or take a wound, you now are bleeding and have to make a Vigor roll at the start of each of your turns. If you fail that roll, you take a wound. If you succeed, you do not take a wound, but you're still bleeding. In order to end the bleeding, you have to succeed with a raise, or someone has to apply a healing roll to you. You could also just apply healing to yourself, I suppose. But that's what Rending Attack does, and so that does make this pretty lethal as a monster, because that claw attack is going to be able to be done 4 times. And because it's being done 4 times, it means it has a really high likelihood of causing a Rending Attack, causing you to bleed, and have to make those Vigor rolls every turn. Now, luckily, that Rending Attack does not stack, so if you have multiple Rendings, you don't have to bleed out multiple times. You just have to succeed once, but something to be aware of. It also has Dark Vision for 10 inches, which is about the same as it is in 5e. It has Detect Blood, and this is where I thought maybe they were just adding the plus 2 to the notice, but it actually gives you additional plus 4 to notice and survival rolls to locate sources with fresh blood. So meaning that if it's using smelling for blood, it's going to actually get a plus 6 to its notice roll. So don't be bleeding when you're trying to run away. It will find you. Also, it's fearless, so it's immune to any fear effects and cannot be intimidated. Makes sense. This thing is kind of a monster and it's kind of scary, so makes sense. It does have Leaper, which is what we thought it was going to have. Leaper says that it allows you to jump twice the normal distance, detailed under movement, and if leaping, as part of a wild attack, the Blood Reaper gains a plus 4 to its damage instead of a plus 2. This really just adds to the scariness of this creature. It also has the multiple arms ability, allowing it to negate the multi-action penalties by 4, as long as at least one of those actions is using its limbs. Now, if you're doing an all-out attack on somebody, this really isn't going to come into play, or not at its full potential. It might come to play as negating 2 penalties from multi-action. And the reason for this is because you're going to be doing a Frenzy for your first attack, a Frenzy for your second attack. Both of those will be without penalty because you have Ambidextrous and 2-fisted. And then you just have a third option you can do as well. You could use it for a normal attack with your claws, or you could use it with a bite. If you're trying to run it just like the 5e version, you're just going to do a bite and then the 4 armed attacks as well. It is size 2, so that just goes into its toughness. It is sleepless, so it doesn't need any sleep and cannot be put to sleep. And then its last ability basically just says that it is considered evil, which I think we can all agree on. That's probably accurate. So looking at this creature overall, I think this creature is extremely scary as far as a creature for Savage Worlds because of how many attacks it can do and the rending attacks it can do and just how many hits it can get off. It's kind of scary how many things it can do. To be clear, this thing could theoretically attack you 5 times with no penalties, and if it adds in Wild Attack, it's going to get a +2 to those rolls. Additionally, based on what I'm seeing, I believe the symbol right here next to Blood Reaper's name indicates that it is a wild card, so it is going to have bennies to soak damage, it's also going to have bennies to re-roll attacks, and do all sorts of fun things, especially with Frenzy when you're re-rolling 3 dice, that makes bennies way stronger. Now, even in 5e, Scarred Lands was designed to be more lethal, so this makes sense to me, and I'm really excited to see what other kind of monsters that we're going to be able to see inside Scarred Lands. I also wouldn't be surprised if Ancestries are at +4 instead of +2, just because the monsters and creatures tend to be a little bit stronger in Scarred Lands. So one of the things I'm realizing right now, as I'm looking over the other page, is that rending is literally right on this other page here when I had to go look for it through the core rules. And it does say here, rending, the Blood Reaper's claws have a rending property, and it goes through all the things that it does, just like we talked about. Now, rending, generally speaking, is in the Fantasy Companion, so maybe they just added this here so that you don't need the Fantasy Companion, and hopefully that kind of ruling can be put into the book itself so that no one needs to use the Fantasy Companion to run Scarred Lands. Either way, I'm super excited to see Scarred Lands for Savage Worlds, and I'm excited to see what other kind of things that we will be getting from it in terms of monsters, character options, and races. If you are interested in getting this monster for your games, there's a link down below to the Drive-Thru RPG link. And stay tuned for future updates for the Scarred Land Kickstarter.